It was a sweltering summer evening in the small town of Willow Creek, where everyone knew each other's names and the local diner served as the hub of community gossip. But on this particular night, something was amiss. A sense of unease settled over the streets like a shroud, a feeling that something dark and sinister was lurking just beneath the surface. At first, it seemed like just another night in Willow Creek. The sun had set hours ago, casting long shadows across the deserted streets. Children were tucked away in their beds, dreaming sweet dreams of ice cream cones and lazy summer days. But as the clock struck 9, a faint murmur began to circulate through town. Someone was whispering about George the gay cat Calhoun. A local eccentric who had lived on the outskirts of town for nigh on 20 years. Some folks claimed he was a witch, with powers beyond comprehension and a reputation for conjuring spirits from beyond the grave. Others whispered that he was something far more sinister, a human animal driven mad by some unseen force. As the night wore on, the whispers grew louder, until it seemed like everyone in town knew about George's supposed dark past. Some even claimed to have seen him prowling the streets under the light of the full moon, his eyes glowing with an otherworldly intensity. Then came the first report of a murder. Mary Ellen Jenkins, a local baker, stumbled into the diner at midnight, her face ashen and her hands trembling like leaves. "It's George," she stammered to anyone who would listen. "I saw him. I saw what he did." Word spread like wildfire. George had killed his neighbor, a quiet old man named Henry Wilson. The police were called, but when they arrived at the scene, all they found was a ravaged body and no sign of George. It was as if he had vanished into thin air. Over the next few days, more bodies turned up. Each one had been brutally murdered, their throats ripped open like torn pages from a book. The townspeople were gripped by terror. Who or what could be doing this? Detective Jameson led the investigation, scouring every inch of town for any clue that might lead them to George. But as they dug deeper, it became clear that something wasn't quite right. Walter Calhoun, George's brother, was interviewed multiple times by the police. He spoke about his sibling with a mixture of sadness and fear. George had always been different, ever since their childhood. He was other, Walter said, choosing his words carefully. After their mother passed away, he just changed. As Jameson pressed on, more disturbing facts began to surface. Neighbors claimed that George would often hold midnight seances in his trailer, summoning spirits and performing dark rituals. Some even spoke of hearing strange noises, growls, howls, or what sounded like the screeching of cats. It was then that Detective Jameson realized the truth. George wasn't a human at all, but something far more sinister. An animal driven mad by some ancient curse, born from the shadows and raised on bloodlust. On the third night after Mary Ellen's discovery, the police found George hiding in his trailer. He was transformed, eyes glowing like lanterns in the dark, skin mottled with thick black fur. As they approached him, he let out a scream unlike anything human ears had ever heard. A raw, animalistic howl that shattered glass and shook the very foundations of the town. When it was over, George lay dead on the floor, his throat torn open like the others. The townsfolk breathed a collective sigh of relief. Justice had been served. But as they walked away from the carnage, they couldn't shake the feeling that something still lurked in the shadows, watching and waiting for its next victim. In the aftermath of George's death, a dark legend began to spread through Willow Creek. The gay cat murders, a series of brutal killings committed by an animal driven mad by some unseen force. Some said that it was a curse, born from the town's own guilt and shame. Others whispered that it was simply a cautionary tale about the dangers of delving too deep into the darkness, where the shadows writhe like living things, where, whatever the truth may be, one thing is certain: on those sweltering summer nights in Willow Creek, when the moon hangs low in the sky and the wind whispers secrets through empty streets, some folks still claim to hear a faint, mournful howl. The cry of George the gay cat Calhoun, forever trapped between worlds.